So if you've been following along with the vintage pattern making, where we're at now is putting in darts. I've already done the darts for my front pieces. Yes, you'll see that my tailor tack markings are still in there. You can worry about taking them out when your skirt is all put together. That's completely fine. Some things to remember about darts. Start at your widest part and work to your narrow tip, which then you can leave a longer string and tie it. Don't backstitch, that will add bulk. And after all, you don't want to add bulk, as well as tying it is a little bit more of a technique that's more couture. So you go ahead, just like you don't need to backstitch at the tip, because we're putting in the waistband, you don't need to backstitch at the top either. Go ahead, and you do want to make sure you pin your darts. If you're like me, I'm using a thread that matches with my weave pretty closely. It makes it a little more difficult if I need to rip out. So just save yourself that headache, pin it, take the time to remove your pins as you stitch. It's a lot easier that way. So make sure, like I said, you want to take your pins out as you stitch. Just because you pinned, don't sew over your pins. You'll break your needle that way. So you'll come up to your tip, and remember, don't backstitch, just go ahead and sew off, which is completely fine. And then, because we are going to tie it, leave a longer string. Make sure you don't cut too close to your needle in your machine, otherwise you'll need to rethread. So just go ahead and clip so you have a bit to tie, and then you just take your bobbin thread and your top thread, and stitch it. Tie it in a little knot, and there you have your dart. So you'll go ahead and do that for all 4 of them with this. Then from there, what we'll be doing is stitching our length. So let me go ahead and stitch that other dart here. And again, you just want to go ahead and stitch off when you get to that point. You always angle that dart. And then you just go ahead and tie that so that it's nicely secured. And then you have that dart done as well. And now I have all 4 of my darts. Now I've already pinned my back and my pleat kick in. But let me show you about matching for your front. Now the front on this, you can change it. I'm not going to. I'm going to leave the vintage V look in it because I like that. I've also done this pattern where you take that out and it makes it just a straight waistband, which is completely fine as well. We're just doing everything at this point though as the pattern goes. So you match your part there, match your cutouts. A lot of people will tell you to cut into. I prefer to cut my notches out and not into my seam allowance so that if I need to, I have that extra seam allowance. Now, I'm not going to be pulling out my serger and using the serger on this either. If you want to, that's perfectly fine. I am going to do everything in a vintage manner, which is also going to mean hand finishing on my seams and not a serger, simply so that you can see the other options. A serger is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't feel like pulling mine out for this, as well as it's a little bit, it's not vintage. And since we're going to go with the whole vintage look, might as well from the whole conception of it. So again, when we are stitching this, is this something so that we don't have puckers going the wrong way? we do want to stitch from the waistband down to the hem for our long sections. So we'll go ahead and place that. Now, because we are not going to have that spot there, we can backstitch here if you feel more comfortable with doing that. I'm just going to set up a little bit above it. It's not that big of a deal. This is at a 5/8. The seam allowance for this pattern is a 5/8. So if you don't have that marking on your machine, that's when you want to pull out your hem gauge, mark it, figure out where your markings are. I am not a heavy pinner. As you can see, I just pinned so that my skirt is held together. If you feel more comfortable pinning heavy, fine. There's nothing wrong with that as well. You can also pin closer to the edge, and then you don't need to remove your pins. Or you can pin on the opposite side of your foot. I, however, just kind of have them in a middle, and I'll just take them out as I stitch. After this point, you do want to start going to your iron. So we'll revisit after we are all stitched, and I'll see you next time.